Video on Uranus is coming out a little bit later. I wanted to do a reading of one of my posts from my group that has to do with planetary magic. This post has a lot to do with alchemy and color correspondences. Basically, the thing to know is that a lot of people, especially in modern astrology and Kabbalah in the last like 200 years, they've created a lot of different planetary correspondences based off of like the vibe of the planet or whatever, or other kinds of reasoning. But these color correspondences are related to the ancient grimoires and what was found to be required to successfully perform planetary magic through, pressure tested means. So these are not just like colors that you feel like are the vibe of the planet. These are the colors that are actually have a de facto relationship to the planet, such that it's required that you use these colors to perform medieval style astrological magic, according to the Gayat Hakim and the Becatrix. All right, here's the post. It's called Fool's Gold. As we know, the color of Saturn is black at the nadir. Jupiter, as we've learned from Picatrix and the most successful professionals of stellar sorcery, has as its truest color correspondence white at the Thema Mundi exaltation ascendant, rising from Saturn's black nadir. Pause. If you haven't watched my previous videos talking about this, I believe it was Chosen Ones, Empty and Dissolve. Basically, in the Hellenistic astrology scheme that associated certain planets with certain signs to create the exaltation points, the points at which those planets are particularly pronounced, and was suggested to be the planets at the beginning of the universe, basically the natal chart of the universe. They associated particularly four planets with each of the angles. So on the ascendant of an astrology chart was Cancer. They stay at the beginning of the universe, and they put Jupiter there. So Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. The midheaven, they put the sun there in Aries, because Aries is at the midheaven in the Thema Mundi, the chart at the beginning of the universe. They put Mars at the descendant, which is another angle, and they put Saturn in Libra on what they call the nadir or the Imam Coeli, which is the bottom angle of the chart. Just know that. Exaltation. All right. Yeah, so we got black at the nadir as Saturn. We've got white as Jupiter on the ascendant, rising from the nadir, rising from Saturn's black nadir. Jupiter, white, as it turns out, if you look into Picatrix. We have the sun is gold, and it's at the midheaven, rising from Jupiter's white ascendant. As we know, the color of Mars is red at the descendant, setting from the sun's golden peak at the midheaven. Now, that's not white to black to red to gold. That is not white to red to gold to black. That's not black to gold to red to white. That is not red to gold to black to white, or any of the other 16 permutations of possible sequence. The Thema Mundi's exaltation lords of the angles go from black to white to gold to red. This is absolutely true. This is the path of the angles in relation to the planets and the signs. The sun rises from the nadir to the ascendant every day. So when we're talking about angles, it's kind of abstract, but let's make it very realistic, right? At nighttime, the sun is on the other side of the earth. So you could think of it as being under the earth, under where you are. Then it rises in the west. When it's rising in the west, that's the ascendant. It's at the rising sign. That's why it's called rising. The sun is rising in the west on the ascendant. Then the sun rises to the midheaven, right? And that's at noon. That's when you look right above you. It's called the mid-heaven, the middle of heaven. You look right above you, and there's the sun. Okay? And then it sets, it rises in the east, it sets in the west. Okay? It sets on the descendant. That's why it's called descending, the descendant. And then from the descendant, in the west, where you have the setting sun, it goes down below the earth, and that's nighttime. Okay? And so that's an understanding of the angles, but we also understand that the angles themselves are associated with certain planets. It's part of the exaltation scheme of the natal chart at the beginning of the universe. So the sun may be rising on the ascendant, but the ascendant is of the nature of Jupiter. It brings increase, right? When the sun is rising, you're getting this gradual increase in light until it reaches a climax, which is the midheaven, right? And the midheaven is of the nature of the sun. This is the sun at its strongest. Makes sense? It doesn't get stronger than at the sun at noon. And then the sun sets from there, starts decreasing in light until it's setting in the west, okay, on the descendant. And then it loses all of its light. It gives way to blackness. And at that point, the sun is in Saturn's place, at the nadir. Saturn is the planet of blackness. You see how this all kind of comes together? So that's an important point is these are the colors of the alchemical stages. Nigredo is blackness. Albedo is whiteness. Citrinitas, which is directly associated with solar light and goldness, if you look it up, is gold, of course. And then the rubedo is redness. Now that's Saturn's blackness, that's Jupiter's whiteness, that's the sun's goldness, and that's Mars's redness. It's Nigredo, Albedo, Citrinitas, and rubedo. Let me read on. I say, sound familiar? It's let me drill something home a little bit harder before I do that. Yeah, what are the odds that these four alchemical colors are in this exact sequence, right? It could have gone red to gold to white to black. It could have gone black to gold to white to red. There's 16 different ways you can reorganize that sequence. But what a coincidence that the lords of the angles and their associated colors, their tried and proven associated colors, are the exact same sequence of the alchemical magnum opus stages, black to white to gold to red. Nigredo, Albedo, Citrinitas, rubedo. I would say that is a cosmically significant sequence. Like, that's not a coincidence. All right, let's read on. Sound familiar? It's alchemy's sequence of the magnum opus. Nigredo to Albedo to Citrinitas to rubedo. There's something of the seasons in the influences of the superior planets. The superior planets are Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the Sun. There's something of the seasons and the influences of the superior planets on the angles, wherefore astrological elements pass over them, just as there's something seasonal about the stages of the alchemical magnum opus. The Nigredo, for example, is called the dark night of the soul, but being more honest, is never a night. It's a dark season of the soul. Similarly, you can't talk about seasons without talking about the central pillars of the tropical zodiac, which create the actual seasons of the earth when the sun passes through. Right? So that's an interesting point is, we have seasons as a four-way division of a year. But in another sense, we kind of have seasons every day, right? Every day we experience a winter when the sun has gone below the earth and it's just coldness and darkness, right? And then we have a spring when the sun is rising again. And then we have a summer when it's at its climax. And then, of course, what we call fall, it's the sun falling. It's descending, right? So we have the rising sign, and then we have the setting sign, the falling sign, the descendant. And, descending. So, right. Similarly, you can't talk about season without talking about, yep. In the middle of summer is the sun's Leo. In the middle of fall, the descendant, the the decrease, the Atum or Atum, because the Egyptian god Atum is associated with the sun on the descendant, is Mars Scorpio. In the middle of winter is Saturn's Aquarius, the sun at its dimmest and least powerful. It's dark night. It's nadir, meaning lowest point, in a sign of detriment, right? So the sun is in its own sign in Leo, and when the sun is in Leo, we call that summer. And when the sun is in Aquarius, we call that winter. And that's where the sun's at its weakest, because the sun is in its sign of detriment, opposite the sign that it rules. So it rules Leo. The opposite sign of Leo is Aquarius, so the sun is at its weakest in Aquarius. Frankly, Jupiter doesn't have much to do with spring Taurus, but let me cook anyways. Facts. But yeah, I mean, that was an important point right there, right? There's so many ways that this all comes together. These are the pillars of the seasons, and they're all associated with the ruling planets. They're associated with the lords of the angles, right? So the sun in Leo is in the sign of the sun, and that's in the middle of summer. If you were to slice the season of summer into the 3 months that make it up, and the 3 signs that make up summer, right, which is Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, well, Leo is right in the middle, isn't it? And if we were to slice winter into the 3 signs that compose it, which is Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, well, Aquarius is in the middle, isn't it? And Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. And if we were to slice the season of fall into the 3 signs that compose it, being Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, well, Scorpio's in the middle, isn't it? Which is ruled by Mars, right? So you're seeing how this all comes together. We have the lords of the angles, which are in some sense seasonal. Then we have the sun passing through the center of every season, ruled by the same planets that rule the lords of the angles, right? It's all very seasonal. What makes the sun fool's gold in the false light is that it's a lower octave or counterfeit lower replica of non-dual light. It contains all glorious, beautiful, and desirable faces of reality. It's the exact polar opposite of Saturn, which is the ultimate author, container, and allocator of all things ugly, odious, and unwanted, the base metal lead. What makes the sun fool's gold, however, is already evident to the reader based off of every truth of which I just spoke. The sun is only one season, part of a cycle. The cycle is unstoppable, and therefore to hold the sun as the ultimate goal in divinity and try to maximize all the beautiful, desirable things it carries within is to disavow and shove under your bed all Saturnian things. Summer will never last forever. Saturn is the lord of winter, the sun is the lord of summer. And summer will never last forever. You remember summer break? You remember being in school, you remember summer break? I'm like, no, I don't want it to end. Why can't summer last forever? Well, summer will never last forever. Many of the greatest secrets of alchemy are found in the Plutonic Scorpio, related to the rubedo of Mars on the descendant. The descendant represents a crucial juncture, a fork in the road. This reddening can be what burns away all the divine gifts of the sun, scorching it into coal and blackness, or if used alchemically, guides you to the rubedo of the philosopher's stone, wherefore all lead presents the opportunity to be used as the medium of transformation, or I should say really the matter of transformation, into true gold. Contained within the secrets of the red is the ability to use lead and the ugly, undesirable, and unwanted things of life to end the cycle, which is the true tormentor. The plutonic nature, the higher octave of the descendant Rebedo Mars offers the possibility of ending the seasons by drawing toward the center of all cycles. Yes, indeed. And I have made some modifications to my little picture that I included as part of the Chosen One's Empty and Dissolve video. And this gives you an idea of how the yugas work. This isn't a traditional Hindu interpretation, I would say. It's not that. But the idea of 4 stages, 4 ages that you can live in that correspond to 4 stages of the soul's quality. I think, given that I found that this master model of how everything works, this rising, culminating, setting, anti-culminating, this Saturn, Jupiter, Sun, Mars, I do believe that you will find that this cycle is present in also the ages in which we are born. And yeah, I think right here is pretty much the ultimate picture. This pretty much says everything. This tells you about ascending souls. This tells you about descending souls. This tells you about the stages of alchemy that we're supposed to pass through. This tells you about what's creating the cycle. So let's think about that, right? We got these 4 seasons. Like, what's that about? Why are we shifting? Why are we moving around like that? Well, in order for that to happen, there's got to be a certain degree of electromagnetism, right? There's got to be something moving things around. And really, that's the Earth. If we look in each of the 4 corners here, Franz Barden called the elemental Earth a tetrapolar magnet, meaning a 4-pole magnet. And he was talking about the elemental Earth, but now I'm definitely talking about the planetary Earth. I've talked about the planetary Earth in other videos. Really, when we're talking about planetary Earth, we're talking about a pull towards immersing yourself and forming deep, rich attachments to things that can be experienced with the 5 senses, and moving outward instead of inward to see many things and attach to them. Right? So in the Tao Te Ching, they say from the Tao comes 1, and from the 1 comes 2, and from the 2 comes 3, and from the 3 comes 10,000 things, all embracing yin and yang. And that's Taoism. I think we can make a couple tweaks on that for a Western interpretation, but just to give the Taoist interpretation first, the Tao, of course, is the ultimate unifying principle, which is comparable to the Logos, I would say, in a Western interpretation, being the divine reason that animates everything. It's consciousness, and it's creation, and it's the Logos, it's the law that comes with it. Right? So I say that it's comparable between of the Western notion of God as being a source creator, a creative generator of consciousness that carries with it a harmonious law and order. I'd say there's a comparison there with the Tao. Then comes the one, what they call the Wu Ji, which is what we would call non-dual light. Wu Ji means without ridgepole, without separation or boundary. And then from the 1 comes 2, which they call the Tai Chi or Tai Chi, and this is yin and yang. Right, this is original duality, which in this is all present in Kabbalah as well. By the way, the catcher would be your Wu Ji. It's the unified oneness. That's your Neptune as well. And then it separates into your Chokhmah and your Binah, and that is your yin and yang. That's primordial form and force, form being related to Binah and Saturn, and then primordial force being related to Uranus. We'll get to that in another video. but that's the beginning of yin and yang. And then from the two comes three in back to Taoism. The three is what they call the Sanbao, which is Jing, Qi, and Shen. Now, there is, I would say, a pretty strong comparison to be made between alchemy's uh, uh, salt, mercury, and sulfur, which is your tria prima, and the Sanbao's Jing, Qi, and Shen. Um, and ultimately, there's a lot of ways that you can conceptualize Jing, Qi, and Shen in relation to the body and what they do, but a really easy beginner's crash course on what these things are like is you can think of them as ranges of density or ethereal nature, meaning things that have a physical form are more so made up of Jing, and things, and you can go deep into that. You could talk about postnatal Jing, prenatal Jing. It gets a little more complicated, but it's like a basic understanding. Yeah, Jing is like on the denser side of the spectrum, so it tends to occupy a form that is composed of matter, and that kind of correlates to the Tria Prima's salt in alchemy. Then we have Qi, so we're moving a little bit up the spectrum of animating content, let's say, and so now becoming a little more ethereal. So now Qi is too ethereal compared to the density of Jing to basically make up a physical form. So Qi is not something you can hold in your hand, but it is something that you can feel and something you can sense. And it's been compared to streams of water, so it's very fluid in that way. So there is a comparison to be made there with mercury, which is fluid or volatile. And then there's sulfur, or let's go back to Sanbao first. Shen, to go even more ethereal than Qi, which is like this energy stream that moves through everything. You get Shen, which is like spirit, which is like this animating content is even more ethereal than Qi, and it's almost like metaphysical how fine and how ethereal it is. Shen means spirit, right? Qi kind of has some correlation to do with breath, but I think a good way to think of it is just energy. And then Jing, which I believe means essence. Yeah, it's just things that are so dense that they compose a material existence. And yeah, I mean, sulfur is related to your Shen, I would say. It does have this kind of like beginning, you know what I mean, fiery, combustive, or soul sort of quality. Yeah, it's like the generative material that puts things into motion. I might be too audacious to do this. But I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to relate all of those things I just said to the modalities of astrology, what they call what do they call it? Quadruplicity, which is fixed, mutable, and cardinal. And yeah, I'm going to compare that to salt, mercury, and cardinal, or salt, mercury, and sulfur, because salt is what's fixed and what's solid. So, in that in some sense is related to fixed signs. And then mercury, of course, is fluid and changeable. Well, I mean, that's the definition of mutable. So that's your mutable signs, like your Pisces and your Sagittarius and your Gemini and everything like that. And then describe sulfur as being like fiery, combustive, and like it's initiating, beginning energy. Well, I mean, that's cardinal to a T, right? So you can even see in the Tao Te Ching's cosmogony, the Tria Prima and the quadruplicity of astrology. Now, they say in the Tao Te Ching, after the three comes 10,000 things, all embracing yin and yang. I kind of want to add four to that. Because from the one to the two to the three to the four, I want to add four to that because you got the four elements. Now, of course, in traditional Chinese, medicine and philosophy, you have a five element system, and that may work for whatever purposes you're trying to use it for. But I really like the four element system, and that's your fire, water, air, and earth. That's what they call the triplicity in astrology. So if you combine a triplicity with a quadruplicity, and by the way, with a yin and yang nature, right? We have diurnal and nocturnal signs, right? And every sign has a sister or a brother sign. That's how we get our signs, right? So it's like, first let's start with yin and yang. Like I want a diurnal and I want a nocturnal. Okay, let's take a diurnal, right? Okay, cool. And we take diurnal, and it's a day sign, and I want to give it a fixed quality. Okay, cool. So it's a day thing, and it's a fixed quality. Well, if it's diurnal, that leaves two possibilities, either fiery or airy. So if it's fixed and it's of a day nature, then between fire and airy, let's say fiery. Okay, so we want a fiery sign that's fixed and it's of a day nature. Well, that's Leo, right? You see how this all kind of comes together? Let's try it again. It's like, okay, I want a nocturnal sign of a yin nature. I want it to be mutable, and I want it to be watery. And so that gives us Pisces. So, yeah, I mean, really, three giving birth to four, giving birth to 12, right? The zodiac is giving birth to arguably 36, being the deacons, which is every sign divided into three. And then you're seeing these compounding fragmentations, right? From the deacons now into what they call the terms or the bounds, divisions of signs into fives, and you're seeing this increasing fragmentation, and before you know it, you got 10,000 things, right? So, yeah, that fragmentation process is being spurred on by the one, which is God, the source, the Wu Ji, the Keter, the Neptune, non-dual light, letting its grip go, letting the soul go to follow what we call the world. The earth is ultimately the world, right? It's literally what we're standing on is an astrological sphere. And it compels us to want to hold things in place. So we have a body, and it's like, well, why am I one person? Why am I not constantly evolving and changing like at hyperspeed? So it's because of the earth. The earth keeps things the same. And so it's a desire to hold things in place and to bury things down, right? So we take the soul, we bury it inside of ourselves, and we bury it in a structure that keeps it in place. It's almost like this matter is just trying its best to keep the spirit inside of us, is just holding it in place. And that same holding is our attachment to other things, right? So it's this desire to hold things in place, to keep them from changing. That's attachment by definition, and that's a force that creates the 10,000 things, right? Why is a refrigerator not a tree? Why is the material, the particles that compose these things not rapidly evolving into all kinds of crazy different shit? It's like, because it's attached to that form, right? It doesn't want to change. It wants to hold on. And so that force that insists on particles to stick together to create certain forms that we can identify, as opposed to rapidly pursuing heat death and all of the particles giving way to entropy and just perfectly dividing energy into a completely continuous situation where all energy has been dispersed throughout the universe equally. The Earth really works hard against that. It wants to cling. It wants to keep things in place, and as a result, we get many, many things. Right? If that Earth principle wasn't there, um, entropy would succeed very quickly, and everything would just disperse, and we have heat death, and or put in metaphysical terms, everything would rapidly become one, right? Because if all energy was equally dispersed, everything would just be one thing, right? Like just say of an ocean. Ocean is not a billion drops of water. It's just one thing. It's just the ocean. So the Earth really works to create 10,000 things. So it's really what we're doing is we're coming from non-dual light. We're coming from source. You know, in Kabbalah terms, it's your Ein Sof. And then the soul is that consciousness from source is like, I want to go explore. I want to see what it's like outside of this oneness. And Pluto's like, okay. So Pluto brings you into the cycle of creation. It gives you the tour of what it's like to experience change, to experience what it's like to journey away from the oneness that we call God. So Pluto presides over that process. So really, when we're moving towards these 10,000 things, it's just Pluto lightening his grip. It's like, I'm going to let you go experience the world, and then it's my job to bring you back. I'm letting you go on a little field trip. And then when you have had your little field trip down there on the world away from God, it's my job to rip you away from that. You're going to build all kinds of roots of attachment because that's the nature of the earth, to hold things in place and to avoid change. But I am going to pull you out of that, and it's going to hurt. Those roots are going to be like nerves, nerve endings, right? It's going to hurt when I do that. And so, yeah, it's basically by releasing you to do that, you are leaving that state of centrality where there is no desire to move in one direction or the other. And now you're giving way to this magnet. Now we have a tetrapolar magnet, 4-pole magnet. We have Earth in these 4 different corners. You can just think of it as 10,000 different magnets pulling you in all kinds of different fucking directions. But it's creating the magnetism that wants you to change between seasons and between different situations. And so the reason that we get anti-culminating, rising, culminating, setting is because we want to experience changes. We want to hold on to different things, right? We want to hold on. It's really begins, it's almost biblical, right? We ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And it's like, wow, evil kind of sucks, doesn't it? So let's just have that good stuff. It was at that moment they were fucked, and they were out of there. That's basically a story of duality, right? They were in a non-dual state in the Garden of Eden, and then they gained knowledge of duality by eating from the fruit of tree of knowledge of good and evil. And at that moment, they're like, no, let's get the evil shit out of there, and let's only take the good stuff. And it's like God's like, doesn't work that way, but let me show you. So they got kicked out of Garden of Eden. Ever since then, we have aspired to all the good things. So we go after the sun, and we repress all the bad things. So we push that down. We try to avoid negative things. That becomes Saturn, right? And this magnetism, and really Jupiter just brings you from Saturn to the sun, and Mars brings you from the sun to Saturn. Jupiter is the rise, and Mars is the fall. And Saturn is rock bottom, and the sun's the golden period. But what's spurring on all these different changes ultimately comes down to the earth, right? The desire to hold things in place. It's like, yes, the sun, all these beautiful things. Oh my God, so beautiful, it's splendor. Like, oh my God, Saturn is reeking. Saturn rules rotting things. Like, to make a Saturn incense in magic is kind of fucking crazy. You got to be taking like dung and like sweaty socks and crazy shit. Like, literally, like Saturn rules all the ugly, bad smelling stuff, and the sun rules all this beautiful. Oh my God, so beautiful. So what do you do when you see all this beautiful stuff and you see all this nasty fucking garbage on the side? It's like, dude, let me cling. Let me put my hand on that sun and let me hold on to it, grab onto it for dear life. It's the Earth's attachment. Um, so interestingly, there are some ways that, because ultimately, there's these two main axes. We have the Pluto and Earth axis, and then we have the Sun and Saturn axis. And Jupiter and Mars mainly are just there to get you from the Saturn to the Sun, and then the Sun back to Saturn. And I was reading, I was doing what I do every Sunday and Wednesday, which is to do the Greek magical papyries, consecration of all things, blessing of the sun, basically a solar ritual from the Greek magical papyri. And there was a line in there, whenever you're doing these scripts or these invocations, it you sink really deep into it, and each time you speak these words, you reflect on it, and you start to see things in different ways. But I go to the last paragraph, right? He says, you're speaking to the sun, the spirits of the sun. You say, you sink after a long time, late in the day as an old man, you who are over the cosmos and under the cosmos, stout master of the sea, hear my voice today and this night in these sacred hours, and let all fulfill through this stone, for the reason I initiate this. Verily, Lord, kapamifi luteuth orphike ortilevehu iarchiai rumiperi thou hiai. And here's the part that I want to point out. I adjure the earth and heaven, and light and darkness, and the all-founding great God Sarusin, you the good diamond who is beside me. Yeah, I adjure the heaven and the earth and light and darkness. That's a really good way of just, in really basic terms, explaining what these two axes are. Pluto and Earth is literally heaven and the earth. What does Pluto want to do? It wants to rip out all your roots and bring you back to the heavens. It wants to bring you back to source. Earth wants to immerse you into the 10,000 things. That's your heaven and earth right there. But you also have light and darkness, which is sun and Saturn, right? It's classically light and darkness. Sun literally is the light bringer, and Saturn is the bringer of darkness and woe. And it's the really interesting, deep way of how this whole model works is the ways that these guys work together, right? Interestingly, Pluto really has a good friend in Saturn. And this makes sense, right? If we're just thinking about like the feel of these planets, like Saturn and Pluto, those are the darkest planets, bro. Those are really, really dark. And they I think they're the most associated with trauma and loss and everything like that, and removal and endings, Pluto is a friend of Saturn because Pluto wants you to learn alchemy such that you remove yourself from worldly attachment. And Saturn is loss and subtraction and deletion. So by forcing you to experience all these negative things and to have all these desires and attachments, and to basically have everything work against you from experiencing those desires and attachments, to have those desires realized, right? You don't get to be a millionaire. Who wants to be a millionaire? Too bad. Yeah, Saturn will put you in poverty. It's like, no, I need a relationship. I need someone to love. Like, oh, no, that's not going to work. I'm Saturn. I'm the Lord of Isolation. You don't get to have that, bringer of unwanted battles. I talk about all this in my Empty and Dissolve video. But yeah, by creating this situation where you have all this attraction outside of you, um, it tends towards, and not necessarily always, but in an ascending soul, this creates the situation where you are forced to learn alchemy. When life deals you such a shitty hand and you don't get any of the things you want, you learn contentment and you start to basically bring your ability to experience happiness in-house. Right, so that goes back to my video, Chosen Ones, Does God Want You to Be Happy? As well as my last video, the story of Job. Chosen Ones, the story of Job. I think that's what it's called, story of Job. Is basically this guy, this Hebrew Hasidic master, was living in a dilapidated hovel, and he was just happy as could be. Well, what did he do? And the lady he was speaking was like, most of us will never reach that state that Rev Zusha was in. It's like, yeah, I mean, what he learned to do was, that guy's surrounded by Saturnine circumstances. Everything outside of him is just in absolute decay and disarray, and just, he has nothing, and he's still happy as can be. Well, he stopped outsourcing his happiness to dependencies on the outside world, right? The earth is looking outside of yourself, and he went within, right? Pluto says the way out is in. Is the way out of reincarnation, the way out of this torment, the way out of the world, right? If we uproot ourselves, we're no longer bound to the world. Remove those attachments, remove those addictions. And so Rev Zusha learned through Saturnian circumstances, by having subtraction, by having foul things going on outside of him, he learned to stop relying on the world for his happiness. He went within. Pluto says the way out is in. And in that way, he untethered himself to the things of the world, and he found true happiness. That's Saturn for an ascending soul. An ascending soul is one who answers to the call of Pluto. A descending soul is one that answers to the call of the earth, because Pluto has released its grasp. And it's allowing the earth to be your god. Right? Pluto brings you back to the actual god, and Earth brings you to the world. It makes you treat the world as God. So you say, okay, well, Saturn's a friend of Pluto, and it's true that the Sun is a friend of the Earth. I'll get to that in a moment, but it can also be true that Saturn works to immerse you deeper into the world. And this is where it gets really freaking interesting, is that the traditional view is that Saturn is associated with severance from spirituality, severance from spirit, and immersion into matter. Right? Saturn has a lot to do with dense material things, high density material things. And that's absolutely true in the case of descending souls, is by experiencing, and conversely, the Sun's associated with spirit, right? They say the Sun is the SOL, the soul. It's associated with the spirit. Matter of fact, they have these something called in Hellenistic astrology called lots, and the lot of the Sun is called the lot of spirit. The Moon is called the lot of fortune, which has a little bit more to do with material things. But we see this spirit matter duality going on with Saturn and the Sun, and this gets complicated. But let me not go all over the freaking place here. But Saturn, basically by creating a situation of loss and decay, Saturn is responsible for the decay of the spirit. Basically, in the descending soul journey, the Saturn is focused inward. There's severance from the inward. There's this experience of things being ugly and unpleasant on the inside, and the Sun works to create the impression that all the good things are on the outside, and that's because these planets are heating the influence of the Earth. So, yeah, it's it's a teaching that inwardness is ugly and foul and unpleasant, and so let's find the beauty in the things of the world instead, right? So this is how Saturn actually works towards making you more material, right? And also, things are ripped away, but only in a way that makes you desire them more. That's the fate of the descending soul. Um, and in that way, the sun is the friend of the earth because it's like, let, sun, can you please? And by the way, what's more life giving? What's more supportive to the earth than the sun, right? And Pluto's the enemy of the earth. And Saturn is the enemy of the earth. Saturn is anti-life. It's the bringer of death and decay. And the sun is prolific. It creates life on earth. So it's like, sun, can you please bring the appearance of beauty to all the things of the world? Can you embed your essence in the things of the world so that you chase after them and you immerse into them and then you become attached to them because you love them and you hold them in your hand. Um, and in a funny way, at the ascending soul level, yeah, the sun and Pluto do share that spirit quality, right? In the same way that Earth and Saturn have that material, let's become more dense, let's become more heavy quality. Even though Saturn, in an alchemical sense, is the essential step towards perfecting Pluto's goal. The Pluto and Sun share this nature of spirit. Pluto wants to bring you back to heaven and experience of spirit, and the Sun is Pluto wants to bring you back to non-dual light, and the Sun is the lower octave of non-dual light. So there is this big, really rich spirit connection, right? The sun is the soul, S-O-L, and the earth is the body, right? So what does Pluto do? It separates the soul from the body, right? It wants you to have the experience of being a soul rather than a body. But paradoxically, in the ascending soul journey, the sun is the enemy, right? In the descending soul journey, um, Saturn is the enemy, right? I don't want ugly things. I want beautiful things that I can fall in love with, and I repress and I disavow all the negative things in life, right? That's the fall of man. That's eating from the fruit of tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? I want all the good things. I don't want to deal with any of the bad things. It's repression. It creates the shadow, which is what Saturn is, which is one of the truest dualities in the soul and the mind. But when it comes to the ascending soul journey, this is where you're paying all your karma. Right? Saturn is associated with karma, but Saturn is bringing ugliness and loss to your surroundings. Right? Chosen ones are poor. Chosen ones have no relationships. They're isolated. And yeah, basically anything that would be enjoyable in the external world or comfortable, Saturn rips that away. And Pluto says, make alchemy out of this. And then you can come back to God. Really complicated way of understanding. But it's true. It's true. All this is true. So yeah, we see how the tetrapolar magnet works. And then we can see Pluto in the middle, at the 0 point. It has no magnetic energy. Right? There's no pull this way or that way. We've reached a point of 0. No preference, no attachment. No positive and no negative. The zodiac is just a magnetic thing, right? If we have 4 elements, fire, water, air, and earth, that division is the 10,000 things. And it's very animal. A lot of the zodiac representations are animalistic, and the earth is associated with animal because what is an animal but a form of consciousness that disavows the rich inner world for the experience of the outer world that's experienced with the 5 senses. And earth is all about the 5 senses and retreating from the inner world and absorbing yourself into the 5 senses of the world, things that you can touch, see, taste. So yeah, really the goal is to let Pluto, like the glyph depicts, sever. And you see that circle above that in the center there is that there's a cross at the bottom, And if you look in the bottom left, top right, bottom right, that's the symbol of the earth. That is the circle, which is the soul. And then in the middle is these two lines. That cross is the cross of matter. So we have the soul ensnared in matter. And then we go back to Pluto. Pluto is the exact opposite. We have the cross at the bottom, cross of matter, but severed and ripped away from it is the soul, the SOL. Right? Go up and look to the top. We got the sun, right? It's a circle. In the Pluto symbol, the circle is rising. It's cut off. It's separated from matter. So you see how this all works together. I've also depicted in this model the yugas. I say we're in the Kali Yuga. We're not really in the full Kali Yuga yet. And this is my interpretation of the yugas based off of my universal model here that I think if you apply, you'll see applies to most things in the world, right? Everything moves in seasons. Rock bottom, the worst the things can ever get. Actually, let's not start there. Let's start the Satya Yuga, because that's where our journey begins. When Pluto guides us into worldly existence, we begin quite pure because we come from source. So that is of the nature of the Satya Yuga, where we are of great moral and spiritual excellence, and great connection to the divine and divine understanding. Okay? Now, as part of our downfall, we experience Mars. Mars burns things away, and it closes things, and it results in divorce. So that's our Satya Treta, right? So now that bound between the Satya Yuga and the Treta Yuga is kind of a little bit in the middle. It's a Satya Treta, and that would then bring you to the Treta Yuga, and the Treta Yuga bring you to the Treta Dvapara Yuga, right? So yeah, the Treta Dvapara Yuga is basically where Mars is at. It's like now we're kind of in the middle, right? We're not at rock bottom, and we're not in our golden age anymore, the Treta Dvapara Yuga. We are at a halfway point in our downfall. Then, the Dvapara Yuga, we experience that. We experience the true... I think I'm just going to redo this whole model. Yeah, I got to fix some of that. Yeah, really, it should be... I don't know how I'd fix that. Anyways, yeah, then we got the Dvapara Kali Yuga, which is where we are now, right? So they call the Kali Yuga the Iron Age. They call the Dvapara Yuga the Bronze Age. But really, I would change that. I would call Mars the Iron Age. I'll call Saturn the Lead Age. This is a part of like traditional planetary correspondences. Anyways, the Dvapara Kali Yuga to the Kali Yuga, right? So this is our downfall at the level of our spirit. Right? When we're talking about yugas, we're talking about our inner world, our inner spiritual condition. And remember, I just got done saying as part of the descending soul journey, Saturn brings decay and decrease and subtraction to this, and fragmentation. Don't forget that's what Saturn has to do with, is dividing things. The sickle of Cronus, shredding things in twain. Right, original duality begins at Binah. This is happening on the inside. The yuga has to do with the spiritual and moral and inner condition. So we go from the Satya Yuga, the level of our soul, to the Kali Yuga, and then we're born into the respective yugas, the respective ages appropriate to that. Then as part of the ascending soul journey, we got to make our way back. So we are currently in the Dvapara Kali Yuga, but we begin to work our way back to that Satya Yuga condition, going through all the same yugas, right? From the Kali Yuga to the Dvapara Kali Yuga, then to the Dvapara Yuga, then to the Treta Dvapara, then to the Treta, then to the Satya Treta, then to the Satya. Right at that point, we have regained our spiritual excellence, and Pluto guides us back to God. Yeah. While I'm on the topic of all this, Vedic sort of stuff, Hindu stuff, um, that blessing of the sun video I did, which is the consecration of all things, which is the Greek magical papyri, the sun magic. Basically, the idea once again of using samskars from your Satya Yuga to make things easier for yourself in this lifetime. Right, your daemon, the spirit that presides over your lifetime, your, let's say, your higher self, what some call a personal guardian angel. That daemon answers to polarity. Polarity is, are you called towards heaven or earth? Which means, do you answer to Pluto or to the planetary Earth? Um, yeah, basically, that daemon, if you're an ascending soul and a chosen one, it wants to experience external Saturnian situations to build the soul, SOL, within, right? To build inner gold, right? So this is about to get crazy for a second. I said that the sun is the lower octave of non-dual light, and people throughout history worship the sun that they can physically see outside of themselves. But non-dual light is at source, and source is at the very core of your being. So you actually have to stop going outward and relying on that external sun to go inward, to find the higher octave, to find non-dual light. In the same way that the progression of the planets outward, right? Earth is our most familiar, and then we got the moon and the sun. The sun is really the biggest. The sun is the closest. Really, to get to God, we actually go out till there's less light. We go out to Saturn, we go out to Uranus, go out to Neptune, go out to Pluto. We can't even see those damn planets. You keep going out, eventually you reach God. But of course, as above, so below, those things are within you. So what I mean when I say to go out to Pluto and beyond means to go inside of yourself, right? So weirdly, we have so many situations where it's like paradoxes and stuff, or like ironic things. The thing that's closest to us actually represents us going out of ourselves, going far outside of ourselves, going far outside from our core to external things. But this actual sun, this actual sphere that's in the sky, is the thing that's closest to us. But to go to the things that are furthest away from us on Earth is to go deepest into ourselves, into our core, the thing that's actually closest to us. So, yeah, when we rely upon the actual physical sun, we're relying upon the lower octave non-dual light, and drawing from samskars. Basically, we're drawing from our positive karma from other lifetimes. When we draw those images into our current lifetime through solar magic, we are decreasing the Saturnian influence in our own lives, right? When we die, our soul is like, no. I want more challenge. I want more evolution. Let's add way more shit. Let's add way more challenges. Let's add way more bullshit for this next life that you gotta deal with, so you could experience growth. Well, when we get here, we're singing a different tune. Right? The soul is like, no, more challenge, more bullshit, add more bullshit. That way you can transform. That way we can transmute more, or you can evolve more. We get here, it's like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? This is fucking awful. So, yeah, that's why a lot of times you can use solar magic to draw from these images and these impressions, these samskars from other lifetimes, to make things easier on yourself, to decrease the shadow, to decrease the darkness, decrease the negativity, add some positivity. Right? Sun is super positive. That's the original positive and negative, is the sun and Saturn. And so I do that with Greek magical papyrus, consecration of all things, also known as PGM. I believe it was 1596 to 715. PGM 1596 to 715. And you're supposed to, I like to use the Pekatric Gayat al-Hakim's book 3, chapter 7, solar incense recipe, which I listed in my video. And you're supposed to consecrate a stone or a phylactery or a ring. I've got a yellow sapphire ring, which Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, Eric Perdue's translation, identified hyacinth being one of the solar stones, which he identified as actually being yellow sapphire rather than what they call jacinth, which is another kind of stone. And yeah, I mean, funny enough, Agrippa, according to Eric Perdue's translation, would say that this yellow sapphire is of a very solar nature. They call it solar stone. But in the Vedic tradition, this is a extremely extraordinarily Jupiterian, jovial stone, right? It's associated with Pisces. They would say to wear this stone on your index finger, which is the finger of Jupiter. And I would say that the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? A lot of the descriptions of what this stone does is Jupiter, Jupiterian to be sure, but it's also very solar. So really, it's drawing a lot from that Satya Treta rise, right? The nature of Jupiter moving to the sun, which is that Satya Treta sort of energy. So I just want to tie that into it. There's certain ways that you can look at things in the world, you know what I mean? That was a lot. Well, yeah, I mean, this is alchemy, right? So it's in the seasons, it's all connected. Alchemy is always happening. And the Rubedo offers the opportunity to undo this pattern of just burning things away. Mars is fire. Mars is traditionally rules alchemy, according to William Lilly. And so Mars can burn things away into ruin, into coal, into lead, and become Saturn, becomes lead, the base worthless metal. Or it can be used to transmute. And alchemy, what do? We transmute lead into true gold. And the sun is fool's gold because we're relying on something external to ourselves. So by elevating that Mars to its higher station, which is Pluto, Pluto is the higher octave of Mars, we achieve an alchemical ability to end the cycle, right? So the Rubedo can actually bring us inward, right? That's what you see in there. You can see the setting. That can be the setting of the cycle of death and rebirth. So we use that fire to transmute rather than to degrade. And then Mars elevates its station to its higher octave, and that's where it draws into the center, to the 0 point, which is Pluto. That was a lot. Well, I mean, everything's always an alchemical process, no matter what life throws at you. Pluto's the Lord of Death and Rebirth. You'll be back here until you learn these lessons. But I hope this universal model, which is applicable to pretty much everything, can help you see how everything is part of an alchemical process of devolution or evolution, whether you like it or not. Thanks for joining me.